Do you ever wonder what happened to all that stuff you dropped in the donation bin? Well, it might have ended up here. In South St. Louis City, truckloads from around the Midwest deliver mounds of clothing items to Remains LLC, where textiles have been getting a second chance since 1981.
Remains is not body parts or roadkill. So the name came from the style that remains in style.
While Remains started as a thrift store, it now exists not to shop for those secondhand items, but because the massive supply of stuff doesn't always meet demands.
So has working here changed your buying habits?
Oh yeah, I only buy underwear.
Yeah.
Paul White is the director of operations, and his main responsibility is to ensure things continue their life cycle outside of the landfills.
Technically, everything is recyclable, but there's a cost to recycle things. So, a tennis shoe has many different components in there, and there's different costs of how to capture those components. So does it make sense to recycle it? That's what we're trying to do. Always trying to find a better way to recycle items that make sense.
So let's talk through how it makes sense for Remains. First, all of the items that were trucked in get dumped into this holding system where the first cycle of sorting happens.
These two individuals, all they're doing is opening up bags to feed the line. So they're opening up the bags, but they're also checking to see if there's anything wet. So sometimes, especially if we have a lot of rain or a leaky trailer, that's the worst thing for us is wet clothes. So
that contaminates like the whole load.
It would go up here.
The items then travel up the line for the next round of sorting.
This area is shoes, toys, purses, belts, bric-a-brac, which is like pots and pans and household items.
Okay.
Those are going down to Central America.
Oh, wow. To get recycled and used, reused.
This is all reuse.
Next, you guessed it, more sorting. Certain material gets pulled to cut into cleaning rags for factories, and this person's sole responsibility is to pull vintage and high-quality clothing. And after all that sorting, the items remaining on the line get baled into pallets. But now what? Who wants all of these once unwanted items?
So maybe 40% gets reused as clothing. Then you have about 25% that gets cut for rags for factories. The other 20% is processed for fiber. So it could end up in mattress padding, in the auto industry, soundproofing, things like that. Belts.
But there is also a growing market for Remains to process more specific odds and ends. Pallets of burlap sacks that once held coffee beans get shipped off to be used in plant nurseries or even down to New Orleans to fish for seafood. These boxes are all full of hospital gowns. Cotton items get shredded into these bales of fiber that are sent off to be made into new textile material.
Wow.
We've made paper before out of old clothes, like 100% cotton sweaters. At one point, we were doing that. We do have a market for single shoes for very low cost, meaning it would be cheaper for me to throw them away, but I store them and I ship them out as a single shoe.
Okay.
And what they do is they do near matches.
Okay.
So they'll take this shoe, they'll find another shoe, similar size, and make a near match.
Oh.
Overseas.
Interesting.
So why put all of these resources into reusing and recycling? Well, the alternative is the consequences that decomposing textiles have when discarded into landfills. Because of the layers upon layers of garbage being dumped into landfills, textiles don't receive the proper oxygen to decompose. This creates a process called anaerobic digestion that creates methane gases, a major contributor to global warming. And it doesn't stop there. The dyes and chemicals used to make these textiles can also break down into the soil and contaminate groundwater. With mass manufacturing of fast fashion with synthetic materials, it's a little beyond the average person's control, but there are some things Paul says we can do to help.
If you Google single socks, it will give you a list of like 60 different uses for a single sock. But there's a lot of trade-ins, a lot of companies are saying trade in your old clothes. And the main thing is just keeping it in the cycle, keeping it in the circle, getting reused and reused.